our impact on business has to shift. More and more, we must stop talking technical, we must start talking business. I mean, even for the vendors, this is a conversation that is now happening. Stop selling solutions, stop selling technology, stop selling boxes, start selling value. Because what the CEO wants to hear is value. And I guess, therefore, this afternoon, it's around how do you begin to pitch your projects? How do you begin to make the business see what impact you're having on the bottom line? Because remember, when the CEO is told, sign off on a check, another expense, the first thing he's thinking about is his shareholder. What will this dollar I am signing off bring back to the shareholder? And if we cannot make that shift in terms of just the narrative in the boardroom, the engagement in the boardroom, the politics in the boardroom, because, okay, the other thing I think about we in the technology world is we get very excited about our projects and we're saying, wow, this is a transformational project we are rolling out. I mean, management of human capital will no longer be the same. But the HR guy is looking at you, the ones of, at you what? Because he's used to doing his thing his way. And now we need to start talking directly, political language in the boardroom. Because in the boardroom, and I'm sure all the speakers this afternoon will tell you, that's a political minefield. And if you cannot be able to maneuver within that minefield, then your projects could be approved with less budget than you wanted it approved. Your projects could be stopped midstream because nobody sees the impact. Or they could be sabotaged even after you've delivered and implemented. I mean, yesterday we were having an exciting public sector stream conversation here, and we were saying you can actually deliver your project on time, on budget, brilliant, as signed off. You've done your user acceptance tests, you've done your gate process, if you have a gate process, everybody is happy with it until you deploy. Then they start saying, no, this thing doesn't work the way we wanted it to work. You know, and within 1 year, your project is thrown out, or a second iteration is required, and you keep getting bad looks from the boardroom because you've come back for more money on the same project. Okay, so that's the conversation we'll be having this afternoon to kick us off. And I know you wanted 20 minutes. John will only be able to do 10, but he's a guru in these things. He's worked in private sector. He's worked as a consultant. He's now working a lot with the public sector, and he will just tell us how do you sell your vision to the board. What's the language? What's the mood? What are the techniques? Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, James. My voice is not as powerful as his, so I'll use the gadget.
Because he's my brother, he's the only one allowed to call me James.
Oh. Yes, I'm his big brother from another mother. Thank you very much, Ronnie. So, my name is John Kinuthia. I'm a Group CEO and Chairman of CHES. CHES stands for Chief Executive Strategies and Solutions. I'm a CEO consultant, or a consultant CEO for hire, basically. So I manage businesses for organizations and boards on their behalf with a specific objective. My last client here was AITEC Africa, where I was Group CEO and Board Vice Chairman. And I just completed that engagement. I'm in transition. I started my career with the Price Waterhouse, even before it became Price Waterhouse Coopers, when I was 18 years old. So basically, I've been a consultant all my life, like Ronnie said. And more importantly, I've been there, done that when it comes to both business, projects, and IT. I started my career as a systems engineer when we used to support people without scripts, and grew through the ranks. I was a CIO, Group CIO for a billion-dollar corporation in the US. I was a director for Capgemini Group in the US. And here, I'm about to take up an assignment as Group CEO and Secretary to the Board for a new investment company formed by some of my former classmates at Staria Voice Center. So what I'm about to share with you is both from experience and also from what we used to call best practice. I think that some people want to run away from that word, but it's still valid. How to sell your vision to the board. And again, the session is CIOs and the board, let's talk business. So I welcome you today, and hopefully, I love the fact that Ronnie introduced this because he hit on all the key points, all the important things we needed to say, the key words, and you're gonna see them in the presentation. He has never seen my presentation before, not this one, and I'm glad he said what he said because that was the best introduction to what I have to say. Keyword, how to sell your vision to the board. The keyword here is sell. A lot of people make the fatal mistake of assuming just because you're in the same company, just because you're the CIO, just because you're a C-level executive, a lot of people assume somehow they'll buy what you have to sell or buy your vision by default. No, they won't. So the important thing here I want to emphasize is the keyword is sell. Don't ever assume that they'll buy. To sell your vision to the board, you must always articulate your IT priorities, which is your vision. Remember, it's your vision. Those are your priorities. This is your project, right? This is your budget. But you must articulate it to the board, and this is the key thing, underlined, in business terms, in business language, and per business drivers that the board cares for. They don't care for all the technical language. In fact, a lot of us lose the board when we start talking technical. So at the bottom, I've made a very slight note. I try to make it as small as possible, but it says if you lack sales and marketing skills, it's a high time you acquire them, because more than anything, you're the key salesman for your organization. The next thing I want to say is very important. I put some growing dollars there just to remind us that this is a business and you have something to sell, and even though it's in the same organization, you still have to sell and market your vision to them. The second thing is, and this is very, very key, always run IT as if it's its own business. Three things about this. One, in today's business environment, the IT organization has become the center of the company. Everything from the business strategy to operations are being delivered through technology. In fact, I want to say this. I deliberately did not put it in the presentation, but this is what I want to say. If I were you and I'm a CIO, I would be working to be next in line or preparing to be next in line in the line of succession. A lot of people know that in the past, the CIO's role or the IT department was under the purview of the CFO. It was actually under finance, right? Some companies still have the mistake of doing that. Number two, a lot of people know that a lot of CEOs used to come from the sales side because that was what the best practice was. Not anymore. The most important role in an organization today, which means the person who's best positioned to take over from the CEO in the line of succession, and when you do business continuity with the organization, or when we do business continuity on behalf of boards, this is what we articulate to them. The CIO is now best placed to be in the next in line of succession from the CEO, because you're running technology, but now you're also factoring in the business. Number one, always know what the board needs. What this means is, remember what Ronnie said, the politics. There are politics that the board has to play to. There's what they are after, and you don't want to be the guy they sacrifice when you are in conflict with what they want and need. Remember, they have a business to run. If you don't know, the key role of the board is they are the key decision-making function of the organization. They make the larger decisions, but in the context of providing direction. The CEO makes the day-to-day executive and operational decisions. The board provides the long-term guidance, the vision, and the guidance. Number two, like I said, I have to emphasize it. Have a P&L. Even if the company has not given you P&L responsibility, run IT like it's a full business, complete with a P&L. Now, this is very important. These are your key stakeholders as far as selling your vision to the board goes. The number one, and always factor these 5 groups into every decision you make. The first one is the board and the CEO. Very important. These ones always work together. Like most of you know, most CEOs have a role in the board. They usually be either chairman of the board, so you find a lot of CEOs being chairman and CEO, or they'll be secretary to the board, or they'll play a very important function. Most of the CEOs out there are directors in the company, so that they can also work in the board. Very important. And that's the most important group to watch. They're usually very underrated until you come to the big decisions. Then you notice your future is in their hands. Number 2, your peers, the C-suite. You have COO. These days, there's a lot of chief this, chief that. Some people call them CxO, but the key ones that we usually are used to are Chief Executive Officer, Chief Financial Officer, Chief Operating Officer. There's now Chief Administrative Officer, Chief Security Officer, the C-suite. Always remember your peers. They're very important when they're stakeholders, because most of them oversee business units within the company. The business units, line of service, sales, marketing. Know the business unit heads. Know the line of service heads. Know the managers on the ground that are making these decisions, because likely you'll need to sell your vision to them as well. So factor these people in as stakeholders. Number 4, internal customers. This is the most forgotten group. Like I said, run your IT organization like a company. So the people who work for you themselves are an organization. They are your first level of customer. Remember them in their different organizations. And then, of course, their external customers. These are the clients to the business units, and so it's a business and its clients. Business case justification. This is the most important thing you have to do when selling your vision to the board. You must always make a business case. A lot of us in technology, we talked about it yesterday, both in the public sector discussion and also in the fireside. A lot of people articulate the technical specifications, very good at doing that. A lot of people make the case on the technical side. Always make the case from a business point of view. How do you do that? Number 1, always tie and measure IT projects and activities to business drivers. The only thing that the CEO and the board care for are these business drivers. Number 1, increase profits, foster company growth. This is exceedingly important. The company is there to make profit. A lot of people focus on revenue. Revenue is good, revenue is great. But at the end of the day, if you don't break even, if you don't make a profit, you are part of that organization. It has to make a profit. So every IT project and activity must remember to make a profit for the company, to foster company growth. Number 2, save costs. Reduce your expenditure so that the company can save costs. As many of you know, IT is a great spender in the organization. Like many people have said, it is usually taken as a consumer, an internal function. Remember to save your costs, reduce expenditure. Boost sales and increase revenue. This is very important. You have a role to use technology to boost the company's sales and increase the revenue. Number 4, optimize asset utilization. Many studies have found that up to 80, sometimes in a lot of companies, over 90% of the assets that the company has invested in are not utilized or underutilized. All you have to do is look at the program menu in your computer. How many of those programs have you actually ever opened? So that reminds you that you have a role to help optimize the use of business asset utilization within the company. 5, very important, most ignored, client satisfaction. Make sure that you have a measurable customer service and that your clients are happy. Again, on the bottom, focus on lean delivery, low-hanging fruits, and quick strikes. A lot of us come from project management background, and if I don't say it later in the presentation because I'll have to rush, remember, always be a project-based organization. Even if it's a task, even if it's an implementation, even if it's something you can do with your eyes closed, deliver it from a project point of view. Remember, project principles will always help you. What I'm saying here is focus on lean delivery, which means don't bloat up your projects or your budget so much that it becomes a bureaucracy within itself. Number 2, always focus on low-hanging fruits. What you can do very easily and quickly. Don't go for the fruit at the top of the tree, the low-hanging one that you can just pick and move on. And most importantly, quick strikes. These are things you can deliver without a lot of effort and in a very short period of time, but showing the greatest results, the greatest impact. If you only make yourself a lean delivery organization with low-hanging fruits that you can quickly do, with quick strike projects that you can deliver quickly and show measurable results, you will be on your way to making your case to the board. Now, this is governance, very important. The board, CxOs, and audit. Always remember that there are 3 parts to this equation, and this is very important, this slide here. The first one is the project must be sound, it must be viable, it must be necessary, it must be tenable. Now, I don't want to go into each of those, but remember that your project must make sense. It must be viable. It must make business sense. It must be necessary to the business. It must be sound. So, like I said, if you use project management principles, whichever you use, PMI, Six Sigma, whatever you use, make sure your project is sound. But now, on the 2 sides at the bottom, on one side is you and your team. On the other side is the stakeholders, others, everybody else, including the board and CxOs. Remember to factor these people in. Now, From a governance perspective, you have these 4 pillars of governance. There's external audit, the people who keep you true. There's internal audit, which audits, now external audit usually audits financials. They also may audit systems and processes and people related items. Internal audit audits processes and financials. Take care of that. The third pillar is your C-suite executives. These are the people who are your project champions. In some organizations, they become the sponsors. These are the people who provide the money. I always say, it's always wise to have your projects, even though you have a budget, have the person who requested the project pay for it. So that if they want a big Mercedes project, they provide the Mercedes price tag. Remember that C-suite executives are your project champions. And number 4, the board, the decision-making organization. In terms of projects and selling your vision to the board, never forget that governance is key. By the way, governance is your best weapon against company politics. When you have sound principles, sound projects, good governance, you are audit ready, and everything is well documented and in place. It is very hard for those, in a lot of organizations, the politics subsidizing competence. So to the extent you can be competent and ensure your governance is in place, then that helps you. Connect with the vision and mission and branding of the organization. I won't go into it, but remember, look at the company vision, remember it. Look at the mission statement, the value statement. Work with marketing and the business to articulate this to yourself and factor that into your project. Remember your branding and tagline, which are supposed to succinctly enforce your brand promise. Now, on the left side, I talk about KPIs. On the right side, I talk about customer satisfaction. Always make a strong business case. In some organizations, KPIs are also referred to as KSIs, right? Key success indicators. They should be measurable, they should be quantifiable, they should be actionable. They reflect the critical success factors of the organization. This is the first thing that is a weapon in your artillery or in your arsenal when you go to talk to the board. Number 2, ROI, return on investment. Always articulate, I'm asking this much money from you, this is what you get in return. Simple basic, simple math, simple business. Promise them what you know you'll deliver. The return on investment has to reflect a greater value than the original investment. Align with the sales objectives. This is very important. A lot of us always forget. Always align yourself to the sales objectives of the company. The goal is to bring in sales, revenue, and ultimately profit, which is the next line. Net profit, not just revenue. Always remember net profit. Set yourself sales targets and measure them. This is for your client. Every time, even if you're a CEO, remember each client, the company has set objectives. Articulate this to yourself so that when you go before the board, you can help them say, I'm asking you to invest $1 million shillings or $1 million for a big client, Safaricom or this or that, because I'll bring this much in return. Articulate to them the set sales target and measure them for them. Now, this is very important. Track your IT capex versus sales ratio. Remember, however much is spent in IT, you have to show that you're bringing that much return. Again, it's a return on investment thing. Track that ratio between your capital expenditure and your sales. Factor all the above into your project. Factor all the above into your budget, and you'll be very safe in articulating to the board. Now, on the right-hand side are 3 customer levels. 1, we always forget your team is your number 1 customer. However you've split them, business analyst, QA, business systems, BI, tech support, DBA, e-commerce, your data center, if you have it, these are your internal customers. When you're planning, plan that first. Number 2, the business itself, the internal business units, your subsidiaries, sales, marketing, any organization within your company that is responsible for the client is your customer. Number 3, the external customers, which means the clients of those business units internally, plus their customers. If you can plan to these 3 levels and go to the board and articulate how your projects and initiatives are going to benefit those 3 levels of customers you're set. Customer satisfaction index, use that for your clients. Human capital, he mentioned it. Human capital value added, this is for your staff. This is HCVA, very, very important. Customer goodwill and feedback is very important. I won't go into this, but again, study KPIs. These are usually mutually set in advance between you and your customers, the stakeholders, the board, the internal business units. On the right side, again, business drivers. Now, the one thing I want to say here, if you see it in red, analyze your vision and your mission and your objectives first. Then set these measurable targets. Make sure they are, like I said, measurable project and post-project, which means you set a benchmark, you say, I'm going to deliver to this, and then agree with your client, and then measure after the project and articulate that. Define and measure progress towards achieving your organizational goals. Now, down there is very important. Identify all the stakeholders and their clients. Define those measurable goals for each stakeholder and each client. And then number 3, measure progress in terms of KPIs toward those goals. For example, I give you one example. You can measure, like I said before, net profit per client expressed as a percentage either of revenue or the company's overall percentage. This is how you articulate to your board that I need to spend this much. On the right-hand side, they speak for themselves. The only thing I'll say at the bottom, which we hadn't covered, foster client satisfaction and goodwill. Very, very important. Client, customer service, and sales objectives, they are very important and very ignored in most organizations. Now, the next thing I'll say here, your finance, accounts, risk, audit, credit. This is very important. Always factor in this. Always work with them and understand the finance, the accounting, the risk, and the audit part of it. This speaks for itself. Never ignore this. Remember, governance is your best weapon against company politics. I won't go through the slide again, but this is the client and you. You have to drive the need to align. You have to know yourself and your business. You have to move from the old school IT to an aligned IT, and you have to become a project-based organization. Next slide. Business continuity, disaster recovery, return on investment, and training. I won't go into it, they speak for themselves. When you're talking to the board, always factor this into your company's objectives from an IT point of view. IT service management, most of you know what that is. But innovation, very important. Again, IT is a business by itself. Articulate it as a business, have your own P&L, and articulate these factors to the board. What I want to say here is the last bit: responsibility, accountability, delegation, and escalation metrics. RACI is what we use: responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. When you're doing any project, include all the stakeholders, including the board, and do simple metrics. Who should be responsible? That's the person who's running the project. Who is accountable? The key decision maker. Who should be held accountable? Who should be consulted? This is where the stakeholders and the subject matter experts come in. And then who should be informed? Your business unit and anybody else who will be touched by the project. Ronnie mentioned this, very important. One, change and change management. The one thing that's constant in every organization, in all business, is change. Prepare for it, be the change driver. Number 2, dirty politics, organizational dynamics. Never ignore those. Politics are constant. The question is, what do you do about them? Do you anticipate them, and how do you play them? Remember, these foundational basics like governance that I've spoken about, the business drivers, those are your pillars that help you. The CIO in the boardroom. Your best position for board leadership, like I say, most CIOs are now a key succession factor, which means they are next in line to the CEO because of those three points that I've mentioned before. Remember, become intimately involved with the 3 levels of clients: sales and marketing, your peers, the board, and the CEO and the CFO. Now, the last bullet point is the most important thing. Communicate, 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 communicate. Do not wait until you're going in front of the CEO, CFO, or the board to ask for money for them to know what you're doing. On a daily, weekly, monthly basis, come up with a communication method. Now, this is very important. When you go before the board, sometimes you have organizational problems that are not defined. This is a very good lineup, and I'm happy to share this presentation and this format. This is a brainstorming session with the board. At the top, validate your objectives as a company and for your project. Come up with a problem statement, business drivers. Number 2, scope and success criteria. Always define the scope and what the success criteria is that the organization should articulate your projects and judge you by. And then come up with business, functional, and technical requirements for your project. Number 2, come up with guiding principles and design objectives. This is the technical side. After that, come up with business and technical constraints. What constrains you and your organization on the business side and on the technical side from achieving those objectives? And this is where the board comes in. If it's a financial issue, they can sort you out. If it's a business issue, they can sort you out. If it's a political issue, they can help you out too. So define this for them before you go in front of them. Brainstorm and envision a solution. Always go with options. Don't just stick to one because, again, they can shoot you down. Don't always assume they will buy your vision. Most important, gap analysis, opportunity identification. Help them articulate, this is where we are today, this is where we want to go, this is the delta in between those two, and this is the opportunity for us. And articulate it with an opportunity cost. If you don't do something about it, this is how much it costs you. Remember, most of these guys just respond to dollar or shilling figures. Express the problem, express the project, express the opportunity and the opportunity cost in shilling or dollar value. If you do something, this is how much we save, this is where we get. This is where we are today, this is where we want to go. If you don't do something, this is the opportunity cost. So nobody will ever come back to you and say, you never told them, or how come it costed at this much. To the extent you're a visionary and can articulate this for them in advance, the project is all yours. And then finally help them figure out the approach to the project, prioritize, and come up with next steps. Question and answer. I don't know whether you want to.
Please, let's give a round of applause.
Thank you very much.
Very well articulated. I have never had you speak that quickly. Obviously, a new gift you've acquired.
Thank you.
But definitely, I think I would request that you share that slide with everyone.
Yes.
Yeah. I think some very good points in there, particularly in terms of just structuring, thinking as you're walking into that door.